Okay. All right. What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight we have Erin Good with us. She is the owner and founder of Updraft Counseling. She's a social worker. She works in the emergency department. I'm going to kind of let her talk a little bit more about her background, but I'm just super stoked to have her on and chat with us about mindset and goal setting and all that good stuff. So take it away, Erin.
Hey, all right. So I am going to share my screen. So I have a PowerPoint. And will you give me the power to share my screen?
Yes. I wish it just like stayed like that.
Yeah.
I understand like why I have to change that every time. Okay. You should have the power now.
Sweet. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing a PowerPoint that says you belong here.
It says ANS regulation.
Okay. Well, that's part of it. Not the one I want to do. Let me see. This is the wild thing is we've all been doing this for so long now, and I know,
same.
Yeah.
Every time I do one of these, it's always there you go.
Okay, excellent.
Solid.
All right. And so I am super excited. Thank you so much for having me around to talk. I get very excited and I do a lot of hand waving. So bear with me here. Also, I am currently in a hotel in Whitefish, Montana. Super excited to go check out Glacier National Park tomorrow. That being said, the internet connection, let's all put good vibes out into the air that the internet connection remains stable. So, all right. So I put together some learning objectives just about like how and why we may experience overwhelm, fear, fight, flight, freeze, or any other strong responses when we're outdoors, when we're at work, when we're just existing as a human in this topsy-turvy world. Uncovering your values, your ideas, and your beliefs. I think that can be really crucial because sometimes that overwhelm can also kind of stem from like, well, I don't know what I want, but I know it's not this sort of thing. And then just kind of learning and applying some grounding techniques to, help regulate yourself, regulate members of your group if you're out with friends, or just, again, being a human in the world. I know, I was chatting with Laura a little bit before it started, and as healthcare workers, or just, again, anyone who's gone through the last couple of years, it's been educational and overwhelming and a lot of different things. So hopefully you can apply these techniques when you need them. A little bit about me. So I have a Master of Social Work. I've been in social services since 2005. Started at a small nonprofit as an administrative assistant. And if you've ever worked at a small nonprofit, you know that you're not just doing one job, you get to do lots of different jobs. So I started picking up skills and learning about what was then, we were doing victim service work. So for folks who had experienced a crime, and through that, I came to social work. So I got my degree in 2010. I'm licensed in Texas, Idaho, and Washington. Bounced around a little bit. I get itchy feet, and so I just like seeing different parts of the world. And so I have, most of my career has been in crisis intervention and de-escalation. So coming into situations where, that a person is having a really difficult moment, whatever that looks like for them, and, being with them, being present, helping to bring them down from that moment, or providing tools or resources that they might need. There's this really amazing thing through the American Alpine Club called the Climbing Grief Fund. So for folks out there who are climbers, if you've ever gone to a climbing gym or purchased a piece of climbing gear, there's usually a little waiver on it that talks about how, climbing is inherently risky, which can include injury or death, etc. A lot of time, for me, I sign the waiver, I clip the thing off my piece of gear, and I don't think a whole lot about it. When I'm out doing the activity, of course, I'm trying to manage risk and doing the best I can to remain safe. but accidents happen. And so the American Alpine Club, they recognize this. So it's a really fantastic service that's available, where if a person who has experienced an accident, a near miss, or a loss in the context of mountain sports, and they want to access counseling, but they don't have insurance or what have you, there's this whole network of clinicians through the Climbing Grief Fund. And the American Alpine Club actually has scholarship funds available, and they will cover the cost of counseling for a member who is, seeking counseling for that. So I registered through there. I also am connected with something called the Responder Alliance, which works with first responders in wilderness context, so like ski patrol, search and rescue, just people who, again, they're in the moment of someone else's, presumably one of the worst days of their lives, and that can impact other people. And then, as Laura mentioned, I opened my own solo practice in July, Updraft Counseling. So it's kind of been my professional social worky realm for my kind of personal life. And again, I've had these two tracks for so long, and I always wanted to find a way to combine them. And then I think, by golly, I think I've figured it out. So, but back when I was living in Tucson, Arizona, I got really into hiking, and I wanted to have the knowledge of if something happened while I was hiking. So I got a wilderness first responder. I took that training, which I highly encourage anyone to have first aid training, wilderness first aid, just good stuff to know. Hopefully you'll never have to use it, but if you do, good stuff to know. I was a hiking and mountain biking guide for a while in Tucson. The Spokane Mountaineers has a series of classes. And mountain school, I took a course on mountaineering in 2019, and that just opened up this entire new world for me of climbing and snow and all this amazing stuff that exists. I'm not sure how much snow you get in Virginia or anywhere else, but I've really come to love and appreciate and have a healthy respect for snow. And then I like to run a lot. I like to run up things. I like to run really far. I like ultras because they ultimately turn into a hiking and eating contest, and I can do both of those things all day long. It's the best. I'll keep going. So that was a little bit about me there. And that last bullet point is I do a lot of activities on my own in remote places, and so far I've made it back to my car each time. So always being mindful of that is ultimately my goal. Like, summits are cool, but I want to make it back home because I have a good. All right. If folks want to put it in the chat, or of course we can just have a conversation. Are you able to hear me okay still?
Yeah, you cut out, at least for me, a little bit there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I had a little pop-up. Yeah, that said, your internet is unstable. And I'm like, I'm trying.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was just wondering if people are comfortable, or, I was going to say you can write it in a chat if you want to be anonymous and send it directly to Laura and she can recite it back. But since we've got a smaller group too, we can just have a conversation. But just thinking about like what holds you back from pursuing what you want, or that little voice that says, oh, I'm not a runner yet, but I will be a runner when I fill in the blank. Like if there's anything like that. I know for me, it was always just that not feeling like I was there yet. I don't know where there was, but I wasn't there yet.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, I tend to do a lot of like what if thinking. So that tends to like hold me back from going further, or in today's topic, as in showing up at new places, new trailheads and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking a little bit more about that? Like,
oh, sure.
An example of a what if that you've noticed recently?
I tend to like want to go hiking when it's not convenient for anyone else. So a lot of what if thinking of like going solo, like what does that look like? I'm scared of what that would feel like. How far would I go? What if something were to happen? I don't know, it just always feels uneasy to me, but I'm like, probably nothing will happen, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
I definitely I feel like a lot of the like kind of in a similar vein. And I think particularly for me, working in the ER and kind of seeing like the outcome of some of this, like, some of those accidents, especially now where I work, working in a ski town and, a bike park and so yeah, kind of seeing the the result of some of these things that we love. I also started listening to the Sharp End podcast,
Oh yeah.
which I love, but also
Yeah.
like I'm always like, ooh, like this might not be a good idea for me. Because it talks about those accidents and it kind of like brings that more into the forefront. I think it's really great because you learn a lot. And I think it's important to have those discussions. But I think for me, it's like kind of the twofold of like, oh, I'm like seeing this manifest in real life. And then I'm also like hearing about it a lot. So yeah, that definitely like the worst case scenario.
Oh
um
yeah.
yeah, and then also just like when I think about like my running goals or whatever, or some of my it's different. So like with running, it's more like um how do I get from like where I am now to like where I want to be? Like that's a really far gap. And so like closing the gap can seem like pretty overwhelming sometimes. And then with skiing, that's more like that fear side of like avalanches and like I am doing like that's the last place that I want to die. People are like, oh, he died doing what he loved. I'm like, that's a pretty
Yeah.
shitty way to die.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a little bit of both.
Yeah. That reaction has always kind of hit me wrong or like hit me sideways of like, I don't think they, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. So I appreciate the sharing, and it's totally all very valid too, of like these are real things that happen, and not knowing what a trailhead looks like. And so it's reasonable to have these questions, absolutely. So there's no pathology there. It's absolutely like a normal human reaction. And also, how do we manage that, where if we do want to, as you said, like closing that gap or take that step towards the next thing. So that's where I believe this is my friend and yours, the nervous system, will come in. And I don't know why some of the slides didn't have the pretty background. So enjoy the boring black and white, but the information is fascinating, I promise. So your nervous system, so there's a part of your nervous system, it's super complex and probably beyond what's applicable here today, but the part of your nervous system that regulates so much stuff. So these are involuntary things. There's your heart rate, your blood pressure, respiration, digestion, sexual arousal, like the autonomic nervous system, or ANS, which is much shorter. But also every time I say it in my head, I'm like, don't say anus, don't say anus. So now that we've got that out of the way, but your ANS, your nervous system, can you imagine what it would be like if you had to sit there and think all of the time about like, okay, heart, I need you to beat now. Like, no worries, your nervous system has got you. So all that automatic stuff takes place here. These are also reactions that we may have without conscious thought. So if you think about, whatever your belief system. So if we're just walking along at night and there's the unknown person in the trench coat, you might just naturally think like, oh, I'm heightened now, I'm paying attention, I'm looking out. Or if you're on the trail and you're cruising along, but then you hear like rustling in the bushes, but again, you might be on high alert. That's this part of your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. It's saying like, okay, we got to get ready. Not sure what we're going to do. Are we going to fight? Are we going to run away? But we're ready, doggone it. So your ANS dictates how you react to both real and perceived threats. And I think that's a real critical piece here, is real and perceived threats. So if you go out, if you decide, I want to learn how to climb, and you've got a friend who's been climbing since they were able to walk, their reaction to exposure to height is probably going to be different from yours. So, the first time I ever went climbing, I was like 5 feet off the ground and I was fighting for my life. Whereas the person that I was with, again, they're one of those people who like grew up climbing, and they were just like, what's the big deal? Like, my dude, you're 5 feet off the ground. But again, it was the perceived threat. I had never been off the ground like that before, and never had someone else holding a rope. And so it was incredibly overwhelming. And my nervous system was all kinds of reacting. But for them, they're like, this is not a big deal. It was to me, though. So I think that's important keeping forward. So if there's an area where you're super comfortable, like I have no problem flinging myself up and down a mountain now, but cooking terrifies me. So anytime I have to cook something, I'm like sweating and I'm worried I'm going to mess it up, and it feels high stakes. Like if I screw this up, I'm going to be hungry and now I won't have my food. So, it's each person's own perception. And then I just order a pizza. So at our most basic level, that nervous system serves two functions. So it's trying to keep us safe and alive, and then, passing on those genes while we keep alive. And I thought this was a funny meme that I saw on Instagram, where, we spend our whole life avoiding steep cliffs, and then a climber comes along and is like, oh, cool, I want to climb that. So just to put it in perspective here. So again, we are doing, or, sometimes when we're engaging in outdoor activities, like whether it's slinging ourselves down a mountain on a bike, like that is not necessarily something that is natural to a human. Like you're getting on a bike and you're, at a downhill park, or you're, hiking up a mountain. So that's why, part of your reaction, again, is completely valid, because your body's like, is this safe? Are we okay? Is this okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's this whole thing that, like, I really like Polyvagle Theory. Got my little book here, but as you can see, this is like a 200-page book. So I put it in one slide. It's not going to do it justice, but just to keep it in mind a little bit, where there's these kind of two different states. There's this, settled and engaged, where we're rested, we're digesting food, we're social, we're connected, we're safe. And then there's the sympathetic, where it's like, all right, it's time to move. We're doing the thing. We're engaging on our hike. We're getting on our bike. Maybe we're roping up. We're starting to get, we're about to move forward. So we've got this like window of tolerance. So almost imagine it as like with bowling. So you've got the bowling alley, and then you've got gutters on each side. And that the ball can kind of go down or what have you. But sometimes if it goes in the gutter, that's where this whole, if the event moves beyond our capacity, then our sympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system can move into this fight, crash, zone out, done, survive, do all of it all at the same time, sort of panicky mode. And that's where we can freeze up or have that other reaction. So you've got your window of tolerance and you're doing the thing, and then maybe you're going up the hill and you're starting to feel like, oh gosh, my legs are burning and my lungs. Ooh, so maybe you start to get overwhelmed, but then you get to the top and you enjoy the view and you have a snack, and then you kind of like, okay. And you look at your friends and they're smiling and having a good time. That's another piece, is since we are social creatures, then we can, seeing other people's faces can help us feel safer, which has also been interesting in this era of Zoom and having cameras on or off or different things. So, in a lot of the activities, so think about it like mountain biking or hiking or, road cycling, where if you're all in a line, you're not necessarily looking at each other's faces. So that's where it is nice to have those breaks and to check in, and you can see like, oh, you're having a good time, or like, oof, you need to eat something, you can check in with one another. Anyway, so like Polyvagal Theory, I think it's super interesting. There's a whole lot on it. And on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you might get your information from. But just keeping in mind where you've got your parasympathetic, that like rest, digest, your sympathetic, which has kind of got that zone. And then the parasympathetic is like, we're beyond. Oh, yeah. So all of my wild arm movement here is more nicely captured on this slide. So regulation. So when your nervous system is regulated, you're kind of moving throughout that. You're scanning the environment. You're able to take in information. Sometimes you might hear people refer to a state of flow where it's like things are clicking. I feel great. The trail is hero dirt and smooth and awesome. Everything's going well. And then we get into that dysregulated state where it's just like, oof, we are in the danger zone, feeling overwhelmed or stuck, tunnel vision. So I think this is really interesting if you're trying to learn a new skill or teach another person a new skill. When our nervous system is dysregulated, everything kind of tightens into focus, and the focus is on survival. So it's really hard to take in new information. So think about a time where you've tried to learn a new skill and, someone's talking to you and you're trying so hard, like, come on, brain, do it. But then if it's not sticking, like, that's okay. That's part of this process. It's not anything wrong with you or like you're not getting it. It's just you're probably feeling overwhelmed in that moment. Your brain is doing what it was designed to do, which is to keep you safe and alive. So have some grace and just notice that. And, if that comes up next, or, as a human, it will probably come up again. So in that moment, just be like, okay, I know what's happening here. This is my nervous system. I am going to take a deep breath. I'm going to try to bring it back down. And then you might find that your tunnel vision expands, and then you can, maybe pick up part of that skill.
Mm-hmm. That's something that I notice in, like, I say in real life, but outdoors is real life, but in the nursing world, like,
yeah,
if we, so moving from a bigger facility to now where I'm at, it's super small facility, without a lot of help. So as the nurses, like, we're mixing the meds, we're drawing the labs, we're actually physically like running the labs and the machines.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's like a really, really overwhelming learning process. And when we had a couple of days that were super busy, and I would just like, I remember a couple of times, like, I'd go into the med room and be like looking for, some sort of antibiotic that I needed to get and mix. And like, I wouldn't be able to find it because I was just so like tunnel vision. And then I was like, okay, pause, like, deep breath, like, take a minute, slow down. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
And then I also had a moment of definitely this, on climbing, or not like kind of climbing, doing the Via Ferrata route.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a climber. I absolutely hate heights. I hate exposure. But it was a group of us. I think there was like 7 friends. And I was like, yeah, like, let's do it. It'll be fun. It'll be great. Like, be brave, push my limits. And I froze. Like, I froze on the wall. My brother was behind me, and it probably was like 5 to 10 minutes where I was like, I can't do this. Like, I have to go backwards. There's no way I'm doing this. Like, this is not happening. And like hyperventilating and like just freaking the fuck out. And it took a while. It took like my brother was kind of like, yes, you can, yes, you can, yes, you can. And then his friend had to backtrack and like walk me through every step. Because there's kind of this like crux move where you have to like,
oh yeah,
go around this corner, and it's like a 500-foot like exposure. And I was just like, I can't, there's no way. And yeah, and so like you said, like seeing someone else's face who was like, we can do this together. And then also just having like that constant reminder from my brother of like, you can do this. Like, you can't go back. Like, what do you do if you go back? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was definitely like a very like fight or flight, freeze, like all of it at once.
Yeah, all of it at the same time.
I was like, how do I get out of this? Because I'm not doing this.
Yes.
And I'll never do it again
Totally.
now. Like, that was like for sure like type 3 fun. Like, I'm never doing that ever again. But
yeah. Check the box. We're good.
Yep, done and done. One and done.
Yeah.
But
Well, that was so I got into a skiing accident in February, and then tore my ACL, had surgery in April, and then in June, which in fairness was probably a bit soon after surgery, but I am who I am. I went downhill mountain biking, and for the first time at a ski resort, and it was amazing. Like it was just a very, it was a green route, but the first time I was standing at the point of dropping in, and holy cow, I started panicking, and I didn't know what to do because in my brain, all I could hear was, you know what happened last time you were at a ski resort? Something terrible is going to happen. And I was just completely frozen on my bike, like staring down. And I went with a friend, and he had gone first. And then, when I didn't follow, he walked his bike back. And I didn't know what to do at all. And I was feeling so bad, like I'm going to spoil my friend's time, and I'm freaking out, and this is dumb, and I'm a social worker and I should know better, like all of this. Like I can sit here and talk about it, but I'm still human too. But I could not think of what to do next. And my friend was so incredibly patient, and he was like, just walk your bike down, because it was kind of a little steep drop off, and then it mellowed out. And that's what I did. I walked my bike past the steep part, and I was like, oh, but like walking my bike had not even crossed my mind at all. And then as soon as he said it, I was like, yes, this is an option. Yeah. So like I went past that part, and it was fine. And actually had a great day. And I did the same one 3 times. I was thinking, Laura, what you posted earlier about, I can't remember the pre-ride,
re-ride, free ride.
Yes. And I'm like, I did that, and it was totally awesome. But anyway, yeah. So we are human. We have this happen. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you should get over it. It just means, again, your brain and your body is doing what it's designed to do, which is keep you safe and keep you moving forward. But now that you know that, you can also, if it happens, when it happens, approach it from this place of like kindness and tenderness of like, oh, like, thank you for looking out for me. I appreciate that. I'm going to move forward now. So just breathing through it and acknowledging that can be helpful. All right. Another thing, so that was my very brief sort of like nervous system, blah. But another part is, I think uncovering your values is super important. Like, why do you do what you do? Like, why do you want to go check out another trailhead? Like, why do you want to do things by yourself? Why do you want to ride your bike? Like any of those. And I know, like, if you've with microcosm coaching, like I talk a lot about like, what is your why? And it's super popular. And there's a whole book about, there's many books, but Simon Sinek, I believe is his name, Sinek.
Yeah.
Has
Simon
a
Sinek.
book. Yeah. Has a great TED talk. There's a book. There's all kinds of stuff. But I do think it's incredibly helpful to drill down why you're doing these things, because that can also kind of lead to some of those feelings of being out of alignment. If you've ever, all of your friends are doing an activity and you want to hang out with your friends, so you do the activity, but you're not enjoying it. Maybe that's because it's out of alignment with what you value. And I think, a lot of businesses, corporations have this whole mission, vision, value statement. And I often encourage people to write down their own values, because it can make a little bit of personal disclosure. Like, I went through divorce last year. And so like, all right. Am I back?
Yeah. Lost you there for a second again, but you're back.
But thinking about like what is important to me in a relationship with another person as I'm kind of, venturing out into that wilderness. But it makes it really easy and clear about what I am looking for. If a person is not in alignment with that, it doesn't mean they're a bad person, but it just means they're not for me. And that's okay. I know I'm not for everybody either.
Yeah.
But just getting clear about why you're doing the things you want to do. There was a period of my life too where I was having a rough go, and that external validation was super important. The kudos on Strava or the likes on Instagram or the things like that. So I'd go up and I'd run farther or try to run faster, or do something bigger or more vert or whatever. And I was just getting so tired. And I just, realized I'm forcing this thing, and it's out of alignment. I keep saying that, but that's been something that's been really important to me this year in particular, is what is in alignment with what I want? How can I do more of that?
Yeah, I think that that's a big thing these days, especially with social media. One of my friends, Alyssa, she has a pretty large social media following, and she's an ultra runner as well. And she'll get a lot of people will ask questions about running ultras, and but I don't like running or whatever. And she's like, then don't run. Just because I'm doing it, it doesn't mean you have to. And so I think these days, in this hyper connected world, it's so easy to be everyone's doing ultras, I need to do an ultra. And it's well, do you even want to do an ultra? Do you even want to go run for 7 hours straight? Probably not. I don't know. So yeah, I think really trying to turn that off, and tuning into what what you actually want to do, and like you said, what's your why and your own values, not this perception that the internet is forcing down everyone's throat these days.
Yeah, totally. And something I learned that has actually made my experience of using and consuming Instagram better, for me at least, is there's an option where you can hide counts. And I use, because there's also those things where, comparison is the thief of joy. As I would see someone who, had a photo, I'm well, my picture was better, but they, they've got 6,000 likes, or I have 11. Or that's not helpful. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't add to my life. So also, again, examining why is that important in that particular moment, but also just hide it. Doesn't matter. It's a number, like any other number.
Yeah. I hid mine a long time ago. I don't think people who follow me can see my likes, and then I also can't see anyone else's.
Yeah,
that's been a huge too. It's been so nice.
Yeah,
it's I don't know, I don't care, whatever.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well,
I've also noticed I'm more likely to just writing a caption or whatever. I'm more likely to write just what I want to write, rather than thinking oh, how can I make this really hit or whatever. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. Which draws in nicely to this third point here, is consider for a moment, what are you seeking? Again, what is important to you? What is your why? If it is that validation, if it is that love, that support, what would it be like to give yourself what you're looking for? Whatever that looks like. You're doing a good job. When was the last time that you told yourself, I'm proud of myself? I got out of bed today, I put on pants, I, ate food, I sustained my life for another day, or whatever hard things. Shout out to people who are raising kids. I can, most days, I feel taking care of myself is that's it. But also supporting other people, or having a partner, or doing all of that. There's so much that we do in any given day. It's huge. And just acknowledging that and knowing that you're doing your best, and your best will look different from day to day. But just still loving yourself and supporting yourself. And, this is so much with food too. Nourishing yourself, and that not using food as a reward or different things. What are you seeking from others, or what are you seeking from not just the universe, from a meal, from all of these things. Like just giving yourself permission to have what you're seeking from others. And with that, like knowing your why, knowing what you stand for, knowing what you need, and doing your best to give yourself what you need. And like, don't get me wrong, still, of course, it's great to have connections and everything, but it can also make decisions so much easier. Like if you're tired and listening to your body, even though like, oh, all my friends are going on this really cool hike, but I am exhausted. Like, what do I need right now? I need rest. Okay, like giving yourself that option to rest, and just knowing that like, yeah, I am giving myself what I need right now. That might be a better way to frame it, or it's a different way of framing it, rather than saying like, I'm going to miss out on this hike. Just saying like, I am giving myself what I need right now, and what I need is rest. I think it can be very tempting to push it, or to, all of these things. All right, so putting it all together, kind of bounced all over, and I want to leave some time for questions here, but we've talked about how your nervous system might react. We've talked about values. And again, I think that helps with showing up, because if you know why you're showing up, know what you want to do, whether it's, showing up for your friend's event, or it's showing up at the start line, then how do we put it all together? All right, so look at this happy group of well-regulated humans. Yay. So big part of it is knowing yourself. Again, that kind of goes back to, what are your values? What is important to you? What are, red flags, green flags in friendships, in situations, all of that. And for some people, like definitely, and again, I think for folks who identify as women in particular, like we've probably spent a lot of our life trying to fit or contort or align with what we think we should. So sometimes knowing ourselves can be a new idea for folks at any stage of their life. But just thinking about, who are you? What do you stand for? What is important? And if you're in a place where, sometimes it's good to check in with another trusted person. So do you have a mentor, or do you have a friend who you could solicit feedback? This can also be helpful to like knowing, like I like to think I'm pretty calm, cool, and collected, but if you ask my sister, she'd be like, oh no, when you get overwhelmed, you do this, and things like that, which is good. It's good to have that feedback, and just receiving the feedback and saying, just be discerning. So if you do decide to, ask for feedback, I would highly suggest that you are discerning and you ask it of someone who you trust and that if it's someone that, perhaps you don't know so well, that it might feel very different, because they're like, oh, good, I'm glad you asked, because I've been waiting to tell you, and you're like, oh, no, no. So having like an open conversation about feedback with someone who you trust can be helpful, and like learning your tells. So one thing that I learned is when I'm starting to bonk or crash out on a run or a hike or a mountaineering trip, I will answer, I don't know, to every question, regardless of what it is. So be like, Erin, are you having fun? I don't know. Erin, is the sky blue? I don't know. So like for me, I don't know is code for, I am in a bad place and you need to stop talking to me. And so but I learned that, I got that feedback. So now, before going on a trip, or if it's with people, like it's a new social group or things like that, I will share that. I'll be like, hey, if I'm starting to crash, I'm going to say, I don't know. My friend Taylor, who's the lovely person in the red tank top in the center there, she is usually super chatty. So for Taylor, the absence of her talking, like if I notice like, oh, Taylor's been quiet, then that's usually the point where I will be like, hey, Taylor, how you doing? When was the last time you ate? When was the last time you drank? So like knowing one another, knowing how you react to overwhelm can be incredibly helpful and supportive, both for you, for other people, that sort of thing. So yeah, if I'm just like, I don't know, that's usually like, Erin, you need to eat. And that's not just on the trail, that's like in existence too. I always carry emergency snacks. Checking in. So again, having those check-ins on stopping to take a break or enjoying the view, seeing each other's facial expressions, creating that sense of safety. And then again, be discerning, recreate with people you know, if you're able to. And then if you're going out, like when I first moved to Texas, I used Meetup quite a bit, which that took a huge amount of courage. But you know, being mindful of how you may interface with unknown people, of like, okay, you know, if I'm with someone and I'm just not getting that, you know, if I don't feel like I'm connecting, like maybe thinking ahead of time of how would you remove yourself from that person's energy. So sometimes I'll like be like, oh, hey, I'm going to retie my shoe. Why don't you go ahead? So I was like trying to think of strategies ahead of time to like, if I just wasn't feeling it. Because again, I'm not for everyone. Not everyone is for me. That's okay. But how would you remove yourself from that situation of like, if someone's energy is just like, oof, they are draining. I just look on your journey. I'm going to step off trail to pee. You go ahead, whatever that looks like. And then communicate. So getting on the same page about the objective. So if you are going out with a group of friends and you're with one friend who wants to try to set a fastest known time, and then you're with another friend who wants to stop and take pictures of every wildflower, like those two people have very different goals. So perhaps today is not the day for them to share the adventure. And can you come to an agreement about like, yeah, you go on and you run. I'm comfortable taking all of the wildflower pictures that I want. So just communicating ahead of time about goals. And then also I was thinking about too, so for your thought about like showing up at a new trailhead or doing something solo. When I first moved to Idaho, I didn't know anyone, and it's beautiful here. And I wanted to go out on trails, and you know, I didn't want life to pass me by while I was sitting on my couch, like as an introvert waiting for a friend to somehow know I was there. So I just started like, I would pick a pretty busy trail. Like there's one in town called Tubbs Hill, which is like right downtown. And I would go around that, and I just kind of, you know, go around. There were other people, so it felt safe. And then I just kind of would branch out a little bit more and a little bit more, kind of almost like exposure therapy, where it's like small doses. And then as I got more comfortable going further, I would always, you know, give a friend an itinerary or a plan of like, I'm going to go out. It should take me an hour. I will text you when I get back into town. So kind of having that safe anchor where like, I know we're not doing this together, but you know I'm out, and then I will come back and it'll be good. And that, you know, there's also like different safety devices and things, but just taking little steps. Like you don't have to go out and, you know, through hike the Appalachian Trail for your first adventure. Like Laura mentioned, closing that gap. You start small, take those steps. Also, next one, I'm almost done with the slides here. So again, grounding techniques is if you notice yourself having that reaction, like sometimes we can almost have like this emotion snowball rolling down the hill where you might notice like, oh boy, I feel nervous, and like, I'm pissed that I feel nervous. Like I should be able to do this, or like this is done. And before you know it, you started out feeling nervous, and then now you're upset about being nervous, about being angry, and it's a mess. So just noticing, acknowledging, like I've mentioned a couple times, like your brain is just trying to keep you safe. So control the controllables. So take your water, take your snacks, take sunscreen, try to find comfort, or, you know, whatever's going to help your comfort and help you feel safe in that moment. So reframing thoughts into the affirmative. And what that means is like what to do instead of what not to do. Like if I tell you, do not think about chocolate chip cookies, like what is the first thing that pops into your head? It's cookies. Like your brain has to pull up the thing like, okay, so here's the thing, and now I need to not think about the thing. So instead, you know, which, and also just, yeah, totally think about chocolate chip cookies. They're great. But so in the affirmative, so instead of like, if you're, the classic is when people are climbing and they're like, don't look down, what's the first thing you do? Is you're like, oh, well, okay. So instead, like, look up or look ahead or look toward the anchor or look toward your friend. So the idea is, where do you want to go instead of where do you not want to go? So like, don't think about all the bears, don't think about all the grizzlies and the cougars. Like, okay, like think about you are traveling safely down the trail, so things like that. And do you have a safe object? So like for climbing, there's a knot called a figure 8, which is what keeps you tied into the rope. And for me, I find the figure 8 incredibly grounding, because it's like, once you learn it, it also feels powerful because it's like, oh, I learned this. I know this knot. It is something that keeps me safe. And when I look at it, I know I am capable because I did that. So even like the feel of your shoes, the hiking boots, as you're tying, being mindful of tying your shoes up, about like, I am tying my shoes and I am focusing on the feel of the laces and how do my feet feel in my shoes, and just really in that moment. Or if your brain is starting to go, woo, like just like literally grounding, like how do your feet feel on the earth in this moment on the trail? Is it rocky? Is it smooth? Are there roots? Like trying to bring it into like that sensory grounding thing. Break it into small chunks, small manageable chunks. If you're thinking like, I'm going out on an 8-mile hike, like, no, I'm going to take it 1 mile at a time. I'm going to take it a half mile at a time. Or I know there's a pretty pond a little bit down the way, so I'm going to get to that pond and see how I feel. And then focusing on your exhale. So a lot of times people talk about like, take a deep breath, which is great. Yes, breathing is good. But if you like think about like when you're frightened, if you gasp, like when you're inhaling, it is activating to your system. So it's like you're getting that air in because you might need to take off in a sprint. So when you take a deep breath, focusing on the exhale, because like as you're exhaling, that is calming to your system. So sometimes there's a technique of you breathe in for a count of 4, and then you hold it, and then you breathe out for a count of 7 or 8. Like that exhale is purposefully elongated there because it's calming to your system. So that's also why I learned this recently. Like if you're singing in your car and like you feel really good while you're singing, a lot of times it's because you're exhaling. And so it's like you're pushing all of this air out while you're singing at the top of your lungs there. And so that can help too. I'm a big fan of the car song. All right, so that is all I had today, but of course I'm happy to answer questions. But I think just keep showing up. Like that's just the biggest thing, is thinking about why you want to do it. And there's, I took a yoga teacher training 2 years ago. And one of the big phrases in that training was, you are ready now. Like on the first day of class, the trainer was making us say like, you are ready now. Because again, there's always going to be 9 million reasons not to do the thing. But also just gently reminding yourself of like, but why not? Like you're ready now. You are ready now. You're good. Like you don't have to have another certificate or another fill in the blank. Like you are ready and you belong here. So do the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of the things to the orientation note, one of the things that my brother had me do, and I had that like frozen moment on the wall, was like he had me like look at my gear and be like, look, you're connected to this cable by 2 tethers. Your harness is strong, you have a helmet, your shoes are laced, like, and he just kind of like getting me to like focus on like, okay, like I'm attached, I'm fine. Like, and that was, I mean, it seems so simple, and it was like kind of to your point, like I hadn't even like thought of that in the moment, but like it's just such a simple like reorienting and, getting me to focus on like what was positive about the experience versus like, oh, there's a giant drop off right here and a tiny iron bar.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is your brother a guide or just
No,
was just oh nice,
just a good older brother.
good, great,
Following
yeah.
around for 32 years now.
Nice.
Emily, do you have any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I actually started therapy this year because I have a generalized anxiety disorder. And so
Yeah.
a lot of the things that you said also like my therapist has mentioned, but the one that I liked the most was like the micro dosing, like take it like half a mile or a mile at a time, or um, like the exposure therapy of like just do a little by yourself. You don't have to do it all,
Yeah.
like you don't have to do an 8 mile hike by yourself the first time, or just like, yeah, break it down into smaller chunks and see how it feels. And yeah, that just like makes a lot of sense to me to like approach it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, one of the conversations I had today with someone on a call was she's actually kind of going through a similar thing of wanting to get out and do more solo hiking. And one of the things that we talked about for her is like, maybe, well, first of all, we talked about like on your first solo hike, like going to a trail that you've done before. So you're already familiar with like the trailhead and the trail. But then also like you can always turn around. You know, like you said, you don't have to do an 8 mile hike. Like you can walk a half mile, and if you're not feeling it, like turn around, and like no one's going to judge you for that. And you don't have to like, I mean, you can certainly like talk about it and tell people and like hash through that, but like you also don't have to. And
Right.
yeah, you can.
I always think about when I see people coming back down the trail as like you're going up, it's like, I don't know when they turned around. They could have like just started and turned around, or like they could have gone all the way up and now they're on their way back. So it's like your own little secret in like a weird way.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then also
Your
like
comfort zone.
thinking kind of like a grounding technique is like don't think about the bears, and don't think about maybe if there's like a weird guy on the trail or something. Like maybe think about like what is comfortable, like man, I just got new boots and these feel great, or like
Oh yeah.
I'm testing out a new backpack, how does this work, or like wow, it's really like changing seasons now, what does this feel like, or yeah, just kind of like distracting yourself a little bit is
Yeah.
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 That's awesome. Yeah. And just like Laura said, that's like the coolest thing about being outdoors, regardless of what you're doing, is that just noticing the change of season. So yeah, you can do the same trail, 6 months in a row and have 6 different hikes because, now we've got the leaves changing and, back in the spring, the buds were all coming out. So that's also a fun way to think about it too, is like revisiting an old friend.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, definitely. Same trail can look different like day to day, and it's fun to kind of pay attention to those little intricacies. Awesome. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Erin. I appreciate your time and sharing with us, and have so much fun on your adventure tomorrow.
Right, will do.
In this weekend in Glacier. And I will put this recording up probably tomorrow. I'm gonna go have dinner and pack for work this weekend, but yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome and super helpful.
Yay. Yeah. And
thank you.
Nice to meet you, Emily.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Yeah, thanks so much, Emily, for joining us. All right. Have a great
All
night.
right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.